Hi, my name is Shani, and welcome to the Experienced Designers podcast, where we explore the human experience, what it is, and how we might create better ones for ourselves and for others. You're facing a challenge that you don't know how to solve. You're living through a difficult moment. You want to expand on your passions. You want to drive change. What do you do? Many of us seek others, seek community to support us on our journey. But what is actually a community? It isn't enough to just gather people together. Something else has to happen for that sense of community to happen. In this episode, I'm joined by Anamaria Dorgo, head of community at Butter and founder of L&D Shakers, a 4,000 people strong global community driving change within learning and development. We dive into the ingredients of community. How do we set a community up for success? What do we actually do once we are in there? And what muscles do we need to practice individually to make it flourish? And can a community actually be led? Let's explore together. Let's rock and roll, really. Super excited to be face to face digitally with you, Anamaria, and diving into community with you.
Yeah, yoo-hoo. I'm excited. Yeah, we had a couple of chats. This is going to be a good one. I'm always very happy to bounce off ideas with you. Somehow, we always end up in the most interesting places.
Yeah,
So
okay.
let's explore.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's going to be an exploration today. And first and foremost, I always want to start with you and who
Hmm.
you are.
Hmm.
You have a head of community title. When you look back at what you've done, it's learning community, learning community. Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but maybe the first one is like, who are you and why did you end up on this path with community?
Yay. Um, I'm Romanian. I live in the Netherlands for the past 4 years and a half. It's going to be on like 5 soon. And my background is very people focused. So I've been working many years in HR as an HR business partner. I have a bachelor in psychology, master in HR. And then after that initial experience in HR business partnering, I fell in love with learning workshops, trainings, and so on through the work I was doing, but especially through a couple of extracurricular activities that I did as a student. And I always looked at trainers and the people creating that space. And I thought like, wow, this is so magical. I loved those experiences it wasn't school, it was after school, beyond school. And those were the most impactful spaces where I felt more creative and challenged. And I thought, I want to be that person. I didn't know they were trainers or what they were working, but I always thought like, I really want to enable that for other people to have the experience that I'm having right now. So I pivoted from HR business partner to learning and development, and I landed in an amazing Dutch startup scale up company, quite young, and I was the only L&D person in the team. And so I stumbled really into this community building life by mistake, if you want, when I almost went out to outsource my team. I was like, okay, I don't have a team here. I'm alone. I was also reporting to the retail director, so to the commercial side of the business, which was amazing for my role. But I was like, I need to talk with other people doing what I do. I want to see what they're working on. I want to get feedback on my work to know where can I improve and what can get better. And I went to the good old LinkedIn and approached a couple of strangers here in Amsterdam and asked them, hey, do you want to get together maybe once a month and kind of like bounce off ideas, see what you're working on, what I'm working on, and kind of just learn from each other? And half of them said yes. And so that's kind of, we packed everyone in a LinkedIn group because that's where we met. And we started meeting offline before the pandemic. That was 2019, towards the end of the year. And that was the beginning of what today is L&D Shakers. It's a global online community for learning and development professionals. Over 4,000 people from all over the world, loads and loads of learning opportunities, projects, experiments, and so on. I always call it a learning playground. That's what it is for me and for other members. And 2 years ago, it was someone from L&D Shakers that reached out to Jacob, the CEO at Butter, which is the team I'm part of, as the head of community at Butter. And they were searching for someone to start this project. And this person from L&D Shakers reached out to him and said, "You need to talk to Anamaria. She's the person." And they reached out, and I thought, interesting, weird. Like, I was also very, like, a bit scared, because I thought, why are these people contacting me for a community manager role? I'm an L&D person, and yeah, I am part of a community, or I have a community, or I was already with L&D Shakers for 2 years. But my identity wasn't that of a community builder. And so I got intrigued, and I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I always thought, like, I was having so much fun with community building, and it was such a different way of learning, and such a different experience than learning within companies, in schools, everything I experienced prior to that. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I always probably was having that reflection: is this what I'm meant to do? Is this the thing? Is how I can bring my contribution to the world and my talent and so on? And so it wasn't an easy decision to take. I actually had a hard time taking that decision, because I love learning and L&D, and I love that team and manager. Like, I wasn't looking for a change, but in the end, I said, you know what, this came my way, and eventually, I know that I would have gone back to that exploration sooner or later, because my mind was already like, what is this community, like, attracting me like a magnet? So that's where I am, head of community. And head, I may sound fancy, whatever. It's just it's just a title, and it simply implies that I am leading this project. Nothing
You're
more.
leading the project. Yeah, because
There we
actually
go.
that was the question that arose for me when I read the title. I was like,
Yes.
can you be head of a community?
How much time do we have? I yes and no, and I admit I've changed my mind so many times with regards to this, and probably what I'm saying today is going to be totally different than what I think, in a year from now. But um, here are some of the thoughts that I have, or experiences I've made, and I see this similarities and differences in between L&D Shakers, which is a community of practice, is not associated or affiliated to a product in the case of the Butter community. So the moment I started working at Butter, this is a role I'm getting paid for this job. So yes, there was a bit of a more strategy behind, if you want. So if you want to think of it as almost like like the person that sets a direction or a vision, and then the way to get there, you can still decide as a community lead, head, whatever you're called, you can still decide to bring in your members into supporting you and helping you find that every single step, 1, 2, 3, 4, to get to that direction. And at first, I was very firm and saying, no, communities, they have to emerge organically, and they're distributed and fully co-created, and no one takes like, there's no hierarchy in that sense, and no leader. And I see things slightly different now, because I think, yes, you can have co-creation, collaborative, it can emerge organically, but you still need someone, and that someone doesn't have to be a person. It can be a team, it can be a group of people, someone at the steering wheel that even at times gives the yes, the reassurance, the cheering, the okay for that emergence to happen. If there's something that I learned from the Butter community, is that it pays off to go into the building process with your community with a bit of clarity, with a bit of vision, with a bit of direction, because otherwise there's so many things that can emerge in that space. And so what's the criteria to decide which one we say yes to and which one we don't, which one are for now, which ones are for later? Um, so I think you need some sort of someone to steer the community, and especially at the beginning.
Mm.
If I look back even at L&D Shakers, we were steer like a small group of people. We were steering it quite a lot because that's how we're used to working. We are used to steer stuff and manage and delegate, and that's what we've been told, and that's what we've seen in school, and that's how we're evaluated at work, and we're good performers if we can do that. And so that's what we knew. That's what I knew. That's the only way I knew how to lead. So that's what I did. And it wasn't bad, um, because I knew to read the room and I knew when to adjust. And when I didn't knew, people came to me and told me, "Hey,
Mm.
that doesn't really fit with what we're building here." So I learn together with them. But as you build that space, it's really an unknown. You don't know what you're building. At least I didn't knew when I set out to build that initiative. It was never meant to be what it is today. It was an iterative process, and it was just someone saying yes to everything that was coming our way. Oh, that's a great one. Oh, yes, let's do that. Let's like everything was a bunch of yeses and explorations. But that was not the plan from the beginning. And because that space is new and you don't really know where you're going, it's very hard for people to. Not many of us can take that initiative and be like, this is an empty plate, a clean slate, an empty sheet of paper, and I'm going to draw on it whatever I want to. Some people are like, what are others drawing?
Mm.
What can we draw here? Like, do we use colors? Is it watercolors? Do we mix them? Like, what's happening here? And at the beginning, when you build that space, it doesn't have to be a person. Ideally, it's a group of people, but you need someone to set the tone, set the example. What is allowed? How much can we stretch? What is safe? What is not safe, what is frowned upon, what's accepted, cheered, etc. Just to set the example of, I guess that links very well with any type of like culture design within companies as well.
Mm.
So that was a long answer to your question.
No, I love that. And it made me think. I I studied a bit around creativity quite a few years
Mm,
back. And it's also one of those topics that you kind of imagine would benefit from complete freedom and just
mm,
organic growth. And I think my conclusion that I was left with was there need to be frameworks for it and
mm,
pillars of some kind. Big, not like small and constraining, but frameworks that give direction to the energy and the effort. I think that's what I associated when you said this is a lot of this energy that we have, whether it's creative, whether it's relationship building, whether it's related to learning, when we just leave it to go everywhere, it goes nowhere. It
mm,
just evaporates a little. So I can really understand on a conceptual level kind of this need for frameworks.
mm,
And I think we're so often we get stuck in this like binary that frameworks need to be constraining. They don't need to be. Frameworks can be really beautiful and directional. I like the analogy also of like a riverbank to a river.
yeah.
It's like it's just something that it's a guardrail for you to give more power to whatever you're creating, in this case a community. When you did start to create these frameworks or this um, kind of set of yeses and nos,
Mm,
what did you focus on? What did you
mm.
like exclude or include? And
Yes.
maybe what do you see across also? Because you also mentioned here you've built a community of practice, which is huge, like 4,000
Mm,
active members, and it's an
mm,
active community. And
mm.
then a community of affiliation, which is related to a specific
Yes.
product, which is a different type of community. Do you see any commonalities there in terms of like what is needed to build that frame?
Yes. There are common things and there are things that are different. And to your first question, how do you take the decision what is yes or no? that's always informed, for me at least in my experience, the first thing that informs that is the purpose of the community. Whenever you start something new, there has to be a clear why. That might change slightly over the years, or as the community advances, evolves, grows, I don't know, or it might boil down into smaller bits and pieces for parts of the community. But there has to be this overarching why that informs the people you're inviting in. And then again, the type of activities, frameworks, what do you say yes to, no to? Why is this community different? What makes us special compared to all of the other communities out there? And for L&D Shakers, that's very broad, because there is no, we don't look at data because it's not affiliated to something, it doesn't belong to anyone, it's not right, it's not a thing. So what matters, the things that we're looking at towards yes or no, is it relevant to L&D people? Is this valuable, relevant, timely information that we need to get better at our work? And everything that has to do with experiments, trying things out, doing stuff that we haven't done before gets a yes. If you come up with a new idea of something, you have the yes. If you want to pull a team to help you bring that to life, you do a call to action, you gather the team, you run the project. So that was another framework that we use here, was distribution of control, responsibility, tasks among what we call a core team, which is now over 40 people. So everything that happens in the community, everyone gets a piece of that project. If there is no single, like we rarely have people wishing for projects and putting it to someone and saying, I wish for this thing, would you mind doing it? Because the moment someone comes with an idea is, who's going to do this?
Mm.
Do you want to drive this? And if you don't want to drive it, we take this good idea and again, call to action, we put it in front of the community. And if someone wants to pick it up, they can run with it. And so that was this distribution, just trusting people, allowing them to make this space their own, allowing them to run their own projects, be the face of the community, take ownership for that, and just run with it. And that for me, that was an immense growth opportunity, both as a person and as a professional. And I love to see others stepping into that role and creating the same experience, growth experience for themselves. Whereas with the butter community, we have a very clear purpose. So when I joined the team knew exactly, why do we need a community? What should the community be able to do? Why are we doing this? And why do we need you? Um, and so again, that was this purpose, and that is the container. And because it's a community associated to a brand and the product, we constantly have, and we switch between these two hats. What's in it for the member? What's in it for the business? And these have to overlap seamlessly. And that's the most important framework that we have. And a lot of our yeses and nos is this something that adds value to the members? Yes. Is this something that adds value to the business? Yes. Let's go ahead with it. And if it adds value to the business and it doesn't add value to the community, we drop it. And that's not a community thing. That might be growth, marketing, whatever, something else. If it's not about the members and it doesn't add value to them, that's not community, no matter how important it is for the business. And on the other way around, if we see something that's valuable for the members and not valuable to the business, we sometimes run with some of those projects, because not everything that happens in a community can impact the business straight away, but they will impact it later on because they contribute to connectedness, cohesiousness. Anyway, cohesion. and and so it might be not a direct link to something like businessy, but it's definitely contributing to the health of the community. So that's kind of the biggest framework. And if I were to overlap this too, my preferred way of building community, and it is my preferred way because I believe that it works, is to collaborate, co-create, co-design, human-centered. Community by definition, it's about the masses, about us as a collective. And so I do not believe in this iron hand steering it. And there are communities that are managed like that. They're not the type of communities that I believe have the potential to bring the most value and impact into the world.
Mm.
Um, so, can this be co created? Can we invite people, human centered? Let's research, let's launch something, let's ask for feedback, let's iterate, let's distribute control, give people space, trust them that they can manage and they can do stuff, support. And those are all principles, if you like, that I bring into my work.
I love that. It resonates a lot with many other discussions I have from lots of different angles, but I
Mm,
would love to dive into that a little bit more with you because
mm,
as you say, there are many different kinds of communities and a lot of
yeah.
communities that aren't really a community, they're just a collection of people with a headline on them. Um, so I'm also curious to go a little bit deeper with you. Having and being the leader of big successful communities, what what are the capabilities you think we need to really be able to succeed?
Mm,
Because you talked about your learning experience with this and that you had to change maybe some of your outlook and that you discovered this also through different channels. So yeah, what's how is that maybe different from other spaces
mhm.
that we're used to?
I have so many threads to pull here. I'm just going to pull one
Pull the first and we see what
and pull the
happens.
first one. Capability. So one is the what are the capabilities, and the second part of your question is what did I learn, or how
Mm.
I transform, or the type of capabilities that I build. And for me, it's so I guess I something that I had and has helped me, and I think it's a great, I don't know necessarily, it's more of a mindset, a way of being or operating rather than, and I think it can be learned and practiced like a muscle. Is this uh just creativity, or rather said, more like curiosity and creativity in the approach, and maybe curiosity paired with courage, boldness, just like the ability to go out and ask and look into different places. I constantly had this, after I started, and I constantly had this, that was in the back of my mind. Like that was the first space and the first thing that, and even now, if I read an article, if I see something, if I have an experience, my immediate reaction is to, how can I apply that to community? What can we bring that? So that's this, it's good to be curious and not to be bold enough to experiment and throw yourself at it, knowing that it's okay if it doesn't work out exactly as you plan it, because you can iterate. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, with community, that's why I believe in this co-creation, etc. We build for people, and what I like and what I need might not be what you like and need right now. So in order to make sure that we reach the majority of us and we create things that are impactful for the majority of us, we have to put our brains together to see different facets. And I'm going to link this to the thing that I learned most. And it was a very slap in the face for me. It was in the way, let's call it leadership style, the way you show up. And maybe we associate leadership erroneously with a position of superiority, hierarchy, a position of power, etc. And I used to work as a manager, and that was leadership for me. It was a hierarchy. You are on top. You need to manage. You need to delegate. You need to do this, and then you are responsible for that outcome. So you need to be there like a hawk and make sure that that outcome is being done properly. And properly is properly for me. And with community, I learned that there are many properties. Like my properly and my way of doing things is different than yours, but not, it doesn't mean that mine is better than yours. So one thing that I had to learn is this letting go and trusting others to go their own path, their own process, and trusting them that they are capable and able to find answers and to put their brains together and to deliver onto something equally as, if not better, than I can. And at the beginning, I was all into, oh, let's distribute. And also, kind of, I mean, like, everything we're doing is voluntary work. So you had to realize if you wanted to do more, you needed more hands and brains. So I was like, okay, let's distribute, let's share the task, etc. And then I was going like that manager on top. So how is it going? How does that look like? Oh, maybe this should be like maybe blue, and maybe this should be like to the left. And have you thought about that? And someone stopped me in one of those chats, and he was like, "You told me that I lead this project. This is my way of leading this project. It might not be your way of leading this project, but this is my way. I accept the feedback. If this is a feedback that, I'll think about it. And if this makes sense, I'll be happy to implement it. But I feel that you're still wanting to drive this thing and infuse your view and your way of doing things into my role. And I can't do that. Either it's mine, and then you have to trust me, or it's yours, and then what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. I was shocked, I admit. Like, it was brought to me exactly like this in a chat, and I was, okay. Immediately, like, bucket of cold water under the hat, immediate wake-up call, and I said, you can't go around talking about co-creation and collaboration if you do not allow that space and you do not trust people. You need to let go. And that was the biggest thing that I learned in building. And at Butter, I go with the same principle. Again, we have a core team. That's kind of like my modus operandi, if you want. We have a core team. They all get their space to contribute. I listen to their ideas, their thoughts. They're driving that project. And if they need me, I am there. I'm somewhere in the backseat. I can give suggestions, just like I would give you suggestions for your business. I'm like, by the way, I have an idea for Wonder. And then it's exactly the same. It's like, it's not mine. It's yours. That's my idea. That's my suggestion. It's up to you what you want to do with it. It's a different type of leading, and it's so empowering. I have to say, I like to be led like that. If I look back, the managers that led me like that was the role where I most strived.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, I wasn't enabling that for my teams.
But it's easy to fall into that default because the paradigm and the structures that we're most often in and we get used to are that. I even was reading a book on self-led organizations, and it flagged me just even the word empowerment that you used and how that is even just that word is kind of showing that it means you have power to give away.
Yes.
And what would it look like if you talk about just, enabling agency or talking about something different that is a more, as you were on to before, a more distributed way. But still, like, I'm listening to you, got goosebumps. I was like, yes, I can relate to that lesson, and I can relate to that dynamic that happens from both sides of the equation of having been led in that way and having, fallen into also leading in that way that isn't at all productive. I learned a really good question from somebody a while back. He said, yeah, you should always ask yourself, am I making it different or am I making it better? And that's really good, because I think sometimes we just go for our preference from a leadership point of view, as you were saying, but I would like it to be this way. Yeah, but there are so many ways to create a good solution, and maybe it won't come out as you would have done it, but it'll still come out equally well. So I know I also used to ask people if they came to me, said, yeah, can you come? I said, yeah, how can I add value? Not how can I tell you what to do? How can I add value if I can? And if not, cool, go do your thing. Go find somebody else to add value to your whatever it is that you're doing. So I think there are also like lots of powerful questions that you can use as a little checkpoint in those moments, because it's easy to fall into patterns there.
Yes. And let me tell you one other thing that I know that not that I noticed that happened that surprised me. And this was, we just talked of the perspective of whatever, the leader, the initiator, and the lesson that I learned for myself. But I also went back, and some people have a hard time with that space and that responsibility.
Mm.
Some people straight came to me and said, I need you to tell me what to do.
Mm.
And then I said, I don't want to, because I that's your project. Like, I don't have the I manage my own projects. This is your project. And then you can do whatever. And some people don't know what to do with this, whatever. And maybe coming back to those frameworks, right? Maybe that the role is then stepping into this coach's shoes with the right questions, helping them a bit make sense or prepare, sketch a direction or a vision for themselves that should anchor them. Because for me, I thought, oh, I go from micromanaging to full freedom, do whatever, and then have fun with it. And some people thrive there. If you tell them do whatever, they're like, whoa, thanks, see you later. And others are like, I don't know, I want you to tell me what to do and I will happily do it, but I can't seem to start from nothing.
Mm.
And that was also a lesson, because I'm a self-starter.
Yeah.
I thrive in empty sheets of paper and projects from scratch.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, please, more of that. And I forget that not everyone
It's the
likes
same.
that.
Yeah.
Not everyone likes that. Like, some people downright, they're like, I just want to follow a checklist. I just want to follow the steps. I don't want to have
Mm.
to think what the steps are. Or
Yeah.
maybe they don't know how to.
No, it's a mix, right? Because some of it is
Mm,
what we got used to, and how much we trust ourselves, and how much we
mm,
trust the environment that we're in. And some of it is, as you say, what you thrive on as a person. I remember 9 years ago, and I was getting married to my husband, and we, you know, I'm from Sweden and Israel, and from very, very like secular background. Nobody had any expectations of what it should look like, where it should be, what should be included, if there should be this type of ceremony, that type of ceremony. And I still remember, and much like you know, I love the self-starting and the freedom and all that. But I still remember having had a period of time in that where I was like, what am I going to do? The choice is overwhelming until, and that's funny because then it makes me think, I think for those of us who are more self-starters, I think what we do is we create our framework quite quickly, and then we act within that. We don't just, necessarily go off and do everything everywhere. And some people like to have that framework created within the space of work or community or
mm,
something that it's already purpose set up. But I remember still that feeling of total overwhelm. What am I going to do with all this freedom? There are too many things for me to consider. There are too many choices. And I love the word that you use, anchor, because I
mm,
remember I was looking for anchor points, like a tradition or something that I could pick up and personalize or do something with. So, yeah, it can be really different. But then all the more power to what we were talking about at the beginning of setting some kind of framework that just gives people a little bit of direction on where to
mm,
act.
mm. The good thing about communities is that you can always fall back onto other people.
Mm.
Always. So you might be, okay, it's a blank slate. I don't know what to do. I don't have a framework. I need that. I don't know how to create it. I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? Where do I go next? And my default, ever since I started, actually even before that, it's just I always had colleagues. I always had people around me that were kind of we felt that we pull at the same string, and I probably only ended up working and caring about communities because I felt that I was alone in that role, and I had to kind of outsource a team, which then happened to grow in a community. But probably if I would have had a team, I would have never gone that path of gathering people, for example, like random strangers. And uh, and that's because I think the very first thing, like my instinct when I don't know something and I feel overwhelmed and lost, is to be like, there has to be someone out there that has thought about this, gone through this before, at least one person to bounce off ideas. And it helps me tremendously to jump on a call with someone, even if it's just one person. Imagine it's a group of 3 or 4 or 5. Like the ideas are booming, and somehow everything falls always into place.
Mm.
But even that one person, that one call, a question that they ask, like that sense making collectively, it always helped me build that framework. So I always say, when in doubt, knock on someone's door, invite them into your overwhelm, your questions, your not knowing, and then figure it out together. And with communities, that's very easy because they're there and it's in the word, and everyone's very willing and open to share and contribute, and they're very happy when you ask for help. They're happy to give that help. Um, and so it's just very easy to I constantly say, you don't know how to do, just raise a hand, ask someone, get together, build it together. Um,
Mm. And actually, that just brings me to a question. I think maybe we make a lot of assumptions around this, but I would love to hear your take on why do we crave community so much? What are I mean, with awareness, there could be a lot of different reasons.
yes. I don't I don't know. Like the answer to that question, quite honest and frankly, I do not know, but I know why I crave it.
Mm.
And there's this little story, because I realized that I just said I would have probably never gone that path if I had a group of colleagues. But actually, not a lot of people know this.
Soon more people will know it.
I so
Yeah.
soon more people will know. Yes. Story time. Before L&D Shade, the same year, 2019, me, same, working in L&D, recently moved from Barcelona to Amsterdam. I started a meetup group. And I started a meetup group. I don't remember how it was called. It was a cool name. It was the purpose of that group. I was feeling the need, like just a hunger to learn and get inspired. My previous role, just to set the scene, was occupied my life. Long days, travel, it was all about work for 6 years. The moment I moved to Amsterdam and I made the switch to a 9 to 6 job, and suddenly the evenings were for me and the weekends, and wow, books, courses, all of the things. I started doing all of the things. I entered in this sponge mode and I said, I really want to learn more. I want to talk about creativity with folks. I want to talk about innovation. What is this? What is innovation? Like, what is this thing? But I bet it's interesting. So then I created that meetup, and the purpose was to gather folks to just talk about innovation and creativity in Amsterdam. That was before L&D Shakers. And I only hosted one session with them, and it was, I don't know, 10 methods to brainstorm or ideate or something like that.
Mm.
And 10 people came, and they were all strangers and my friend next to me, because I said, you need to come. If no one joins, at least I have someone to like have a beer with and kind of like cry on your shoulder because what a failure and whatnot. And then 10 strangers came to the meetup, and we had an amazing time. Amazing.
Mm.
And then it switched into like learning and energy shakers and so on. So it's and then the need was different. So
Yeah.
one for me was either this, I don't know something, I don't know a field, I'm curious, I feel this pull towards something. Where are the people that know what this is so I can learn from them? The second part, where are the people that are doing the same work as I do, because I need to get feedback from someone that knows, understands my work. I need to get feedback from someone that's 5 steps ahead. And other times, like there are all sorts of community, as you well said. It could be I I suffered a loss. It's a big grief in my life, and no one around my friends can empathize with that because they haven't suffered the same loss. So I want to talk to people that I don't have to put a lot of words into a sentence for them to know what I feel inside.
Mm.
There's different reasons, accountability. And I don't know if it's, I actually, and I never put this into words, but I think that any type of need that we might have has the potential to lead to a community as a
Mm.
solution or as a
Mm.
result. I don't know now on the spot when you ask, no one asked me this question. So I haven't thought about it, but I'm thinking, is there any need that we have there that could not be met by a group of people coming together around that same need and goal and purpose? I don't know. If someone knows, reach out to us and let us know
Yeah,
what comes to
please let
mind.
us
But
know. I
but
think
I'm
that
like,
sounds very likely. Like, I mean, I've been in communities of exercise, I've been in communities of motherhood and communities of different kind across the years. And as you say, it's something about sharing a common understanding or a common experience or a common challenge, and being able to move through it together,
mm,
with somebody who can empathize and recognize where you're at, and that you don't feel so alone in it.
mm, yeah,
Yeah.
you're working on some like I can't really. This question is going to haunt me
It's
now.
going to
I'm like,
haunt you.
what is it? Like, let me make a list, you know.
I
But
mean, in my family, we call it the takeaway question. When we don't
well
really
done.
know, like we say, I'm going to take away, and then you get to go and think about it and come back.
I like that.
Come back when you're feeling ready, or when you're not, when you need a community to discuss it,
There
you can
we
also
go.
come
Let's
back.
explore this question in a
Exactly.
community.
You never know. I also learned this concept this year, and I thought it was really interesting. We're speaking to a man in Finland called Mika, and he runs a company called Ghost. And he said, and this was really interesting, he said community is an outcome. It's not just because you put 10 people in a room that makes a community. It's the outcome of them actually doing something together. And I don't know if I'm doing him justice by this explanation. It's just me paraphrasing. But yeah, I'm wondering, you have, been really swimming in community. How does this resonate with you?
So can I just say that when we first had a chat a while back, you mentioned this, and that
Yeah.
was my takeaway. It wasn't a question, it was my takeaway, whatever, pondering reflection. Because the chat was amazing, but that stuck with me for a long time after we talked. I
Yeah.
remember I took notes, I put it down. I thought about it.
Mm.
Um, and when I heard it, it almost felt like this, gosh, this is, I never thought about it. I haven't put it into the same words, or in that I haven't made sense of it like that. But when I listened to it first, it's like that's it.
Yeah.
That is it. You don't start with community, and by definition of it, community is a result of the right conditions, bringing people together, all of those building blocks that we talk, building people
Mm.
together, a purpose, a commonality, make sense, bring them in, co-create, collaborate. What is this space? What are we doing here? What is the value? What do we take out, and so on? By the end of it, you have the community that
Yeah.
kind of then self, like grows and has starts to have a life of its own.
Mm.
My brain made a link to a post that I saw yesterday from David Spinks, and I shared it on my profile.
Mm.
Brilliant. 10 lessons, I think 10 lessons that he learned, or 10 like takeaways from his amazing work with communities. And one of them was, people will not join your community for connection. They will join your community for a concrete need that they have.
Mm.
So they want to learn, they want to network, they have that intrinsic motivation. It's almost never connection, ergo community.
Mm.
They will join because they feel that space can offer them something that they need. And as they go in there to get that tool, to get that connection, to get that that network, to get that event, that whatever best practice, whatever it is that they're looking for, as they engage with the community, meet the people, the members, the vibe, and so on, talk to, attend events, and so on, connections are forming, and then they stay for that connection. They stay for the fact that, oh, this feels familiar, this feels like home,
Mm.
this is my tribe, I can turn to these people, I can show them who I am, good, bad, questions, challenges, wins, and so on. So I think it fits very well with what you just said.
Yeah.
Community is the result. It's not a means to build something. That's the goal. That's the result of what,
Mm.
something, of a mix of things we have to put there.
Yeah. The right context, the right experiences that we were sharing together, the actual
Hmm.
living of solving the things together and
Hmm.
moving in a certain direction together. Yeah, I think it for me it's the same principle. It's I've worked a lot with culture, and I view culture a lot as the same. It's also a result. It's not this. I feel like sometimes we talk about that, and it's like a ghost. It's this
Yeah.
thing that exists on its own without connection to anything else. No, it's just here's what you put in. The culture is just the outcome of this, and I guess it's the same here. I think but then we often label communities as just any group of people, any collective of humans, and then we
It's
don't put
so
in this effort to actually turn it into a community.
it's so misunderstood. So misunderstood, this word. I think that 4 years ago when we started, it had a different meaning.
Hmm.
And you might argue that communities are going out through their glory period and they're so important. And I'm happy to hear people talk about them. There's communities all over the place, but so often something else it's labeled as a community. Like just the other day, I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn, join this community of something, something. And at the end, it was a newsletter. You were signing up for a newsletter.
Hmm.
No opportunity to talk back, no opportunity to meet someone, there was no direct, no communication like with anyone else except with the person sending the newsletter, which you could, like, if you wanted to reply to and be like, hey, should we grab a cup, whatever. So I thought, like, wow, it got me so excited that this is a community. I don't know, a space, a Slack channel, something like, a space where I could talk to people interested in that topic. It was a newsletter sign up package as a community, and it's misunderstood, and it's a shame because it's very complex, lots
Hmm.
of facets, lots of it's very hard for me. I'm still learning. I still don't know things. I still read. It's a never ending exploration.
Yeah,
um
I can feel your pain on the fact that we dilute so many words. Like community then loses its meaning when everyone kind of markets it as something else. But then when you were saying this, it also made me think that everything goes through different phases,
mm,
and nothing's ever static, even a community, which is why it just made me loop back to the very beginning where you were talking about exploration and saying yes and
mm.
leaning in and just making it possible to have some kind of evolution, because if you don't, then at some point everything just dulls down and
Yeah,
dies basically.
I don't remember now. I don't like to mention stuff who's that I cannot attribute, but
Yeah.
it fits so well with what you just said, and I'm like, I don't remember who wrote that article. I don't remember. And was this kind of the life cycle, right?
Mm.
And I remember reading it, and the last stage was like dying, like you close the community. And I
Mm.
remember reading it and thinking, like, what do you mean? What do you mean the community dies, like cease
Mm.
to exist, or like it stops or whatever? uh I haven't wrapped my head around that.
Mm.
I think that on a personal level, yes, as a member, you have that, like, you discover, you're excited, you contribute, and then life changes, you take what you need, and that space stops to serve you. As a community, though, I think you can reinvent yourself. It's not just like you said, listen back, get feedback, co-create, take it into something else, new direction as we evolve, and what value do we want to take out of it? I continue to develop that space. And then I was left with this big, when does a community die as a whole? When do you close the door, and do you ever, or like, I don't know.
I don't, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't know. I just,
Yeah.
and maybe it's not like a yes or no firm.
Huh.
I'm thinking in Susan Whelan's like team
Yeah.
theory. I know there are 4 steps, but there's actually a fifth, which is when the team kind of decomposes in a way, but in a structured way.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not always what happens. Sometimes the team keeps evolving,
Come
and
back.
people move out, people move in, and then there are different kind of tells as to whether, okay, no, actually now we're starting
From
over
scratch.
from the
Yeah.
beginning. But then it's also like, well, there is starting over even in the same structure. I feel like in even just with ourselves and the self development, I start over with myself a lot. I'm like, oh, okay,
Every
this is
day,
where
like,
I am.
hello, new you, new me, every day, new me.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes it can feel like that. You're exploring, as you're saying, like you're in this learning space and you're exploring this new thing that you don't really know how to handle, and you kind of feel like you go, okay, I have to remove some stuff, pick this apart, make some space for something new. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just recognizing, as you say, because I like what you said about reinvention, that there
Mm,
is reinvention, and
mm,
that actually there is a little bit of death in there. Like
mm,
some
mm,
things will
mm.
fall off and not keep going for the next one. And actually I think that's sometimes when we get a little bit scared and we kind of pull back and we go, oh, okay, let's just leave it then. Or like either we just leave it to kind of sizzle out, or we don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, that's a bit uncomfortable, that moment when you go, okay, let's look at this. Then,
it is. It's even uncomfortable to leave aside project things you've tried and probably worked at the beginning. They're not working now anymore, or maybe they never worked, but you just were like very stubborn to give them some airtime and like kind of poop make it work. And even there, I noticed like, it's an art to know when to close something,
mm,
no matter how big or small, including community. I guess
yeah.
it's an art, and I'm so attached to communities, and I just witness just witness to other people in my network that both closed a community chapter in their life in very different ways.
Mm,
And even saying this and kind of going back, like remembering, I remember I went back and I was like, what do you mean you're leaving? Like, you're leaving your community behind. Like,
how?
how can you, yeah, like, what is this? How do you feel? What does it feel like?
Mm,
When do you know it's time? Like, so clearly these questions only kind of come to reinforce that I'm not there, but I've seen it happen. So I know that, just like with everything else, you're leaving things behind and you're reinventing and you're moving forward personally, professionally, and so on. And yeah, I don't want to think about it, but
let's not think about it.
let's not think about that. No.
I know. I just speaking of like reinvention and different ideas. I started taking a pottery class at the beginning of this year. And it's really nice because it's just this creative outlet that isn't intellectual and abstract and huge. It's something you can touch with your hands. But obviously, it's not a craft that you master straight away. And I know, yeah, I've tried like throwing or turning a lot on the plate, and you end up with a lot of dough or clay that you can't do anything with. And we had a joke there where we like, okay, I put it in my fuck up bag, and the bag just kept growing of like the plates that never became a plate. But then the beautiful thing happened that I got to like 6 weeks in, and I was like, oh, there's a fair amount of clay in here. Let me make something else. I made something else out of it. And it turned out really nice.
Wow.
And I think also we sometimes discount that in
Wow.
like leaving things or like dropping them off, that there's so much to repurpose in our thoughts. And actually, you were mentioning to me just before we started recording this app called Napkin, where you can kind of drop your thoughts. And for me, actually, that principle of the clay was a little bit the same. Is that um I think we also struggle to like say goodbye to these things or leave a community or leave something because we think it's the very end. But actually, we still brought a lot of things with us, a lot of learnings, a lot of cool things that we can repurpose, maybe into a new community, maybe into another type of context that's going to mean something. So, yeah, immediately when you said I thought about my bag of clay.
Of clay.
That's yeah, was
I
painful in the moment for sure, because you're sitting there and you're trying and then it just goes, it just turns out as a smashed tomato.
hmm.
But
Applies to jobs, to roles as well, to jobs, right?
mm,
When we like we switch careers, we switch jobs all the time. And when you look back, what do you remember?
yeah,
Like I remember the things I've learned and the things that I now know how to do to perfect further or use in whatever it is I'm doing now.
yeah,
Um, so it's interesting. I like this idea of that if a door closes, it doesn't mean that whatever it's inside that room remains stuck there and dusted and no one can reach in and use those things, whatever is you're leaving behind. But actually, it's you're closing a door, but it's just a door. There's no room and there's nothing inside because you're taking everything
you're
with you.
taking everything with you.
That's it.
No,
It's just a door.
but I actually, if we just bring it down to the individual, anyone being in a
Mm,
community,
mm,
isn't that the like best wish for anyone coming to an end with their journey in a community, is that they actually come away with their bag full of learning, great experiences, having felt supported, having, had their expansion, having had a sense of belonging, whatever is the purpose of
yeah,
the community.
yeah.
um is for me then like coming back to the very first thing we talked about, did it serve me with this? And yeah, and then maybe what we need is something else, which kind of leads me to then like for us to find a little way to like wrap up some core actions. I think I want to divide it into two.
Mm,
One is what we like actions we can do to start building community around us. And you talked a little bit about just the bravery of getting people
mm,
together. But the second, I think, is also that we talked about the mindset and capability or the muscle that
mm,
we practice to actually be able to both contribute and benefit from
mm.
community. So, yeah, I don't know which one you want to start with, but I would love to hear your take on like an action or two that you think are
I
useful for each.
I can start with the first one because I get this question a lot. I started two communities. I started them very differently. So I always look first at like what type of community you're building, what do you want to put out there. But what I, regardless of context and who you are and what you want to build, and from where I'm standing, it's the thing that helped me get like down this path was the fact that I didn't sit down to have a big vision or a strategy for something. But if you're starting a community, if I would have been able to foresee or plan everything that this community is today, I would have never started. I would have been like, me, I can never do that. And so there was a blessing in this not knowing what you're building. And not everyone has that blessing, but I always say start small. And people are like, I need a platform, I need a strategy, I need a stellar on board. It's like, no, what you need is 5 people in a room. That's all you need. 5 people have a one sentence why. And that one sentence why has to be so relevant to you. You need to be personally invested, curious, interested in whatever it is that why is.
Mm.
That's why I'm sometimes thinking, would I be able to lead, build, create a community into a topic that I'm not interested in? And I
Yeah.
think the answer for myself is no.
Mm.
You put a lot of yourself into a community, a lot
Yeah.
of it. So the fact that I was interested in learning, I'm personally interested in facilitation, for example, in the case of butter, and how do I hone that skill that's a tremendous help. So one, that why, the one sentence why, personally relevant to you.
Mm.
Why are you building this?
Mm.
Pitch that to folks around you that you believe might be interested in the same. Some will say yes, others will say no. The ones that are saying yes, don't bother with strategies and what types of events. I was I don't know. Let's just have lunch and meet, like talk to each other. That's how L&D Shaker started, with a lunch with 5 people,
Mm.
strangers that were working in L&D in Amsterdam. When we got together, we said, so what challenges do you have? And how does your work look like? And how's your manager and your budget and your project? So how can we help? What would you need from this monthly gathering that we're
Mm.
doing? Okay, so then how do we organize these things? Like when we meet, what should happen there? All of that. It was like no one sat before to be like, strategic, I need to. And so just start, and people will tell you what to do, and you
Mm.
will for sure build something that people need and they will be engaged in. So you will never have to worry about engagement
Mm.
ever. If you sit in your corner with your sheet of paper and you try to invent and think what people might like, they might dislike that and they will not engage. So
Yeah.
then you have that issue on your hands.
Mm.
So to recap, to start a clear why, one sentence speech, gather people in the room and start building from there. And the third one I would add there, which I haven't put into words until recently, probably 3 years into this community building journey. I was very guided about my own curiosity, and that was luck because I really loved the topic. And I guess that was the lucky part because I was surrounded by people that were interested in the same thing. But if I were to look back, all we did was focus on value, value,
Mm.
value, 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 value.
Mm.
What should happen in the space for you to come back to it?
Yeah.
Pain solutions. How is the space helpful?
Mm.
Um, so those are the three things. And then in terms of the skills, I think they fit very well in here. I don't know if I should call it research, just like listen, be open to listen to what people are truly saying. I always had my motivations as to why I want to be part of that community. That was my personal, that's why I started. I was like, my motivation here is to learn from you. And then I suddenly, like, I very soon after, I realized that not everyone's motivation in the room was the same to join. Some people were motivated about other things.
Mm.
And so I think it's this everything that has to do with a human centered approach and the skills that belong into that journey, like your researcher had, chatting with people, asking things, constantly ask for feedback. And it doesn't have to come in the form of a super serious survey. Just talk to people, keep your ear out, have coffee chats, ask around, etc. And adapt to that and just have fun. It was a blessing for me. That was like when I realized that I can do in the community whatever I want to, because there's no manager, no strategy, no budgets, no agendas. Like there's no one stopping you. Like,
Mm.
for me, that was very powerful.
Mm.
Very, and I took advantage of that. You bet I did. Like I launched stuff in projects and never done before. Yes. Have no clue how to do it. Please. Like zero risk
Mm.
to learn and experiment. But you need to build that muscle of, am I confident, or am I not comfortable is the word. Am I comfortable to put something into the world that is not perfect according to
Mm.
my. And I was just having a conversation this morning with someone from Melanie Shakers, and we were talking about that. It's like, I like to experiment, and then I have to be comfortable with shipping things that are not perfect.
Yeah.
So then when do you know where to ship, and what's the boundary in between, okay, it's not perfect, but it's good enough, and poor quality?
Mm.
Because constantly say, oh, is this poor quality, or is this, and we both agree that the needle goes to, is this serving the purpose
Mm.
why we're designing it for? Yes. Can it be improved, made prettier, more efficient, faster, whatever, with better tools? It can. But
Mm.
if we launch it like this, in this state, does it serve the purpose? Will it do what we want it to do? Why we created? Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Put it out there and
Go for it.
go for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things
A lot of other
that I
things.
might add there. But this would be the talk to people, bring people in, be
Mm.
curious, experiment, throw yourself out, just have fun. Don't take yourself too serious. Very often, it's like even the butter community, it's like, don't take yourself too serious. Like, let's just run with it. Let's just explore. Throw yourself at it. Just like have fun. Too much scripted, too much strategy, too much. That's just takes all the fun out of the
Yeah.
role.
And it actually takes all the creativity and creative heights out of it too, because we're so afraid that we're going to do something wrong.
Gosh, this brings me last point. But do you remember when you said that you read a lot about creativity and then you need that container? I find it fascinating because you also need to find the fine line in between how how to build that container to be just the right amount of container,
Mhm.
and not be too constrictive and
Yeah.
not too loose. Because when it's too loose, where do I start? But when it's too constrictive, it's encapsulated. I can't, that,
No.
like, I'm too constricted by the container.
Mm.
So this is also, and it's similar with community frameworks, the same.
Yeah.
How much is planning, how much is emergence?
Yeah.
It's the same. What is the
What's
that
the
container?
And I guess, that comes down to a lot what you have been saying is that's what you also have to co-create and explore together with the people in the community. That's not something you can do or judge. And I think to your points of like, when do you ship something? And I've also been there so many times. I also usually ask myself, what would make this better at this point? And sometimes it is actually like, no, actually, I need to put some work for this to make sense for somebody else. But as soon as you start going, I need somebody else's opinion on this, then it's time to ship it. Like, that's the point where it needs to interact with somebody else than me, because
I
we're
love it.
so good at talking things to death for 9
Mm.
months. And you go, yeah, but already 6 months ago, you could have shipped it, you could have improved it, it could have been better. But instead, you get stuck in these constraining structures. So for me, also like community or communities
Mm.
of practice or of different needs also definitely serve to like get you
Mm.
unstuck a little.
And I don't know if I can ask this, or if
Yeah,
this.
ask.
I saw it communicate on LinkedIn, so I was like, "Tell me more about the House of Wonder. What is that?" Opportunity to pitch in the project.
Opportunity
I
to
don't
pitch.
know.
Yeah, it's still a little bit under wraps.
Hey, it wouldn't it would be wrong if you had already everything figured out.
No,
Like,
I think we're
I saw
working.
there's a bit of a, like, just a bit of a whoo,
Yeah,
a loose, a
a little
loose.
bit of a loose thing. And we are exploring this ourselves. And thank you for asking. And yeah, I think we are playing with the framework and when it's good to ship. So
Hmm,
we
that's so
have a lot of
exciting.
thoughts, and yeah, I won't share more in this channel
We'll
yet.
all stay with our eyes peeled on all your
Exactly.
communications. But I saw that and I thought, "Ah, so excited! It's so cool. Yes, have fun
Yes,
with it.
it
Have
is.
fun with
It
it."
is fun. Yeah, I think that's definitely the goal. Fun and exploration. Which, yeah, I think we could go on for at least another hour. And we also had a nice wrap. So Thank you for exploring and sharing and philosophizing. It was amazing as always.
Thank you very much. This was great. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to The Experienced Designers. I hope this episode brought you some new insight and some new topics to stop and wonder about. Special thanks to Anamaria for venturing into exploring the life and death of communities. And please come back to us if you have answers to some of the questions we pondered and didn't really land in an answer to. Maybe you do. And of course, don't forget to click subscribe, and as always, get in touch with any questions or suggestions. That's how better experiences are built.